Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. Today I have with me Skip. And Skip, I need help with your last name real quick.
Mondragon.
Monadragon. He is a wrestling enthusiast, and he is also something more powerful than anything that anyone could be at this moment, and that's an author. He's a person that focuses in on mental health. He's a person that he embodies a good spirit. Because anybody that wrestles, and I'm going to say this real quick before I go through the full introduction, and we're talking about amateur wrestling, we're talking about folk style, freestyle, Greco-Roman, it doesn't matter. It's a discipline. It is a individualized sport, but it has a team aspect, and each individual has to win, has to sometimes have to take losses in certain instances for this team to actually point out or win a meet. That's something that I want to establish from the get go because I know a lot of people, some people think of professional wrestling, and that is not the case. So, Skip, please introduce yourself or tell everyone about yourself. Don't introduce yourself. Tell everyone about yourself. Let's get some insight to you, and then we will talk about this book.
Awesome. Well, thank you, JR. I am the third of 8 children. I have four younger brothers, a younger sister, and 2 older sisters. We grew up under meager means. Unfortunately, my father came back from the Korean War a broken man. He was quite ill. My aunt, his older sister, and my older cousin say the man that went to war was not the man that came back. He suffered from alcoholism and what I'm sure was PTSD and bipolar disorder based on the symptoms. He would become violent when he would drink. And I have basically no recollection of things before the age of 7. So it was a very traumatic childhood. But my eldest sister, Roma, tells us that when my dad would come home, we'd run and hide because we didn't know which dad was going to greet us, the kind, loving, gentle dad or the angry, violent dad who was horribly abusive to my mom and didn't really see that abuse. And wasn't until I was into my 30s when I asked about my dad did my mom disclose how violent he was, threatened her with a knife to her throat, kick, punch, knocked out teeth, was horrible to her, threatened to throw her out of a second-story window at one point. And yet she never badmouthed my dad. When I was growing up, she would simply say, "Your dad is ill. Your dad is ill." And unfortunately, my dad died at the age of 34. So I grew up under those circumstances. I am a physician.
Doctor.
The proud father of 5 adult children, have 4 grandchildren, married to my sweetheart of 39 years.
Whoa.
And we spent 26 and a half years in the Army. I was deployed 37 months during that time and 30 months in combat zones. They share something in common with JR, and that we're both longtime wrestlers and wrestling enthusiasts. We could talk, I told JR before we started, we could talk for hours about our love, enthusiasm for wrestling. And we'll probably I know we'll get into some of this because it plays a big part of my life and what shaped me.
Okay, and one thing I like that you highlighted, and I want my audience to, or it's mine, this is your audience, it's everybody's audience. I like that the story that your mother said about your father, because a lot of people don't realize these things, and I became more influent into these areas of mental health not being diagnosed, and mental health was actually taboo. My mother was born in the 50s. And my mom told me, growing up in the 60s and 70s, it was something that was kind of shunned. It was kind of not thought of. And then you talk to people from latter generations, mental health is a focus now with what we do. So your dad not being diagnosed or being taken care of, that's a sad event. And I really feel bad for him and you in the instance that he had to go through this without any help. And what I'm trying to get at with the audience is that, when you hear someone tell you a story about the past like this, you really have to be accepting of the fact that there truly was not any help at that time. No one reached out to take care of people like that. They just let them fall by the wayside, correct?
Well, he did receive some help. He was in and out. He was receiving care from the VA, the Veterans Administration. Okay. However, they diagnosed him, my mother said, with schizophrenia.
Oh.
And I think the reason that was because it sounds like he would become psychotic. And psychosis is when you lose contact with reality, that you cannot discern what's real and what's not real, what people would call crazy. And because of the bipolar, that I believe he would become psychotic, and therefore they didn't understand bipolar. They didn't even have that. It wasn't even an entity back in the 50s and early 60s. It was not a diagnosis that they had. And so a lot of things got grouped under schizophrenia. And so that's what they diagnosed him at. And they had a very limited array of medications that they could treat with during those days. So he was ill. Plus you compound that with the PTSD and the alcoholism, that there were many factors.
That's a lot of pressure
working against my father. Yes.
Okay. So at age 7, you start remembering things.
Right.
What's the first thing that comes to thought at 7 years old?
The first memories that I have is we had moved from Denver and to Trinidad, where my mother
Whoa.
lived. So Denver, Colorado. Well, Trinidad, Colorado.
Okay.
So from Denver to Trinidad, which is at the southern part of Colorado, not too far from the New Mexico border. And there I am with my cousins and my older sisters, and we are on this front lawn of this very large 3-story house where we moved into. It was on Baca Street, I remember. And we are out there on a summer day. It was hot, blue skies, few scattered clouds, but very hot day. And we're pulling weeds out on the front lawn. And they bought Cokes, these ice cold Cokes that were sweating, on the bottles, and they tasted so good. Oh my gosh, I can still taste how good that Coke tasted on that day. And we were laughing and talking, but that's really where my memories start at the age of 7.
Okay. Now we'll speed up a little bit in life. It seems like from what you're telling, your mom was very influential in your life. Is that correct?
Yes, I tell people that I was privileged to grow up with my 3 greatest heroes. My abuelita, my little grandma, my mom, who I call my mother dear, and my daddy-o, my stepfather. So I was a blessed man. Okay.
Now, let's dive right into it. How did you get into wrestling? Because everyone has a story about how they got into wrestling, and I've never really thrown that out there on the podcast. So mine's real short, so I'll tell it real fast, and then we'll go into yours. Basically, my father passed away when I was 8 years old, okay? So I didn't have a father figure. My mom was great, but she wasn't a father figure. There's a difference there.
That's right.
And there was a man named Bill Hudson. Both of his sons wrestled. They were lower weight class than me. I was always a heavier guy. And one day he seen me. I played soccer, I played football, I did other things, but I didn't excel at those. And one day he said, "Go with me to wrestling practice." I didn't think anything of it. And my mom was always very enthusiastic, so she took me to I forgot. We had some kind of, what was it? I don't even know the name of that sports store, but some sports store. I went in there and I asked a guy about wrestling shoes. He showed me a pair of Nikes. I put them to the side. He handed me a pair of green and black Asics. They were John Smiths, because John Smith had a blue, white, and red pair, but they were John Smiths. That's the first wrestling shoe I owned.
What?
Got some random knee pads. Actually, I think I got volleyball knee pads for practice, and I had decent knee pads, but the volleyball knee pads worked out, and I went and started wrestling, and I never looked back.
Whoa.
So tell me how your story went.
I was typically the smallest kid in my class growing up. So small, we moved frequently. I was shy, I was awkward, both socially and certainly athletically. I didn't know how to kick. I didn't know how to catch. I didn't know how to run, jump, you name it. I can remember in fourth grade, our teacher would take us out to the playground, and approximately every quarter or so during the year, at least that often, we'd have to be tested. Boys on chin-ups and girls on bent arm hang. And I would just dread for my name to be called. And then Skip, she'd call my name. And I'd jump up to the smaller, the lowest bar. And I'd grunt and I'd kick and I'd pull with all my might. And I couldn't do one.
Oh.
And so you'd listen to the snickers and the laughter and the prodding of classmates. We'd go out and teams would be chosen during recess. And invariably, I was the last child chosen by default. And then the team would say, why does he have to be on our team?
Oh.
Oh, be it football, be it basketball, be it baseball, be it tetherball.
Tetherball?
I was horrible.
Could you play some kickball at least?
Yeah, I was bad at kickball.
Oh.
Like I said, I couldn't kick, I couldn't catch, I could barely run. So, and then being small, moving quick, moving frequently, being shy, being awkward. It was a new kid on the block, and I was fodder for bullies. So I was bullied throughout my childhood. And in 8th grade, my mother had remarried and we moved back. At that time, we were living in New Mexico, and that's another story in itself. But my mother remarried, we moved back to Colorado and went out for wrestling. And It was the first time I had this sense, I think I can do this. I know I can do this. And I think I can be good at this. No, I think I can be really good at this. I made the varsity team at 85 pounds, the lowest weight class.
Ooh.
Didn't win a match all year. However, the bullies left me alone. In 9th grade, I was the best wrestler in that room. However, I didn't win a match all year. Why? I couldn't sleep the night before matches. I would toss and turn and didn't get a wink of sleep. So I was emotionally and physically exhausted come the next day, and it showed in my wrestling. However, the summer afterwards, there was a state freestyle tournament, and I entered, won my first match, won my second match, won my third match, won my fourth match, going for the championship, and I won.
Uh-oh.
And afterwards, my coach said, you beat the kid that won this tournament last year. And that just spurred my determination all the more. Went on and won the varsity spot the next year for high school, wrestled high school at 112 pounds throughout my high school career. 2-time district champ, state runner-up, won many state freestyle tournaments, placed in two national freestyle tournaments, and ended up as a honorable mention All-American for high school.
Oh man, so you had a decorated career.
Yes, sir.
And one thing that I'll tell the audience, it's a certain discipline in wrestling. I don't explain it. You just have to be there for it. And I think you kind of know what I'm saying. When you start wrestling humbles you.
Yes.
And when you win and even when you lose, there's always a lesson learned there. And my coach used to put it with me like this. He said, you'll either learn a lesson or you'll be a lesson. And so you won your tournament and you built the self-esteem, right?
Yes, that's one of the life lessons of wrestling. It instills confidence in you, and it changed my self-image. it helped reshape my self-image.
Right. And with someone like me, I grew up with like a little bit of an ego. So when I got fairly well, I just stuck to it. And I knew I was so petty that I knew that I wasn't going to be good at football, wasn't going to be good at this or that. So I would tell people that I retired at like age 14, 15, from these other things. But now you go through wrestling. Um, what was your biggest heartbreak? Because
Oh,
everyone has a heartbreak.
in terms of wrestling,
Yes.
my biggest heartbreak was the state finals my senior year. I had set my sights on being a state folk style champion. So we get to the state finals, and I'm wrestling a kid by the name of Matt Martinez. I had wrestled him the year before, and Matt beat me in a dual meet. But I had wrestled his teammate, a state champion, the summer before at a state freestyle tournament, and I had beat his teammate. And Matt had scouted me. Unfortunately, I hadn't been scouting Matt. That Matt scouted me, apparently. Matt stands about 4'10". Yeah, he's about this wide. And he'd get down in this low squatting position. I mean, low. And we get into the final match, and he's doing this with his hands the whole time and just moving around. And I never got a good shot on Matt to attack his legs. He escaped fairly quickly from me on the bottom. He rode me in those days, got riding time. He rode me about 1 minute and 2 seconds. So he got a point for riding time. And so I lost basically on 2 seconds of riding time. And I relived that match for hundreds, probably thousands of times, if not 10,000s of times, until I was well into my 30s and finally could resolve and say, I lost to a great warrior. I lost to a wrestler who wrestled a better match. And I had a good, distinguished high school career and could go on with that loss. But that loss was such a heartbreak because I felt that I had not only let myself down, but let my coaches down, let my teammates down, let my school down, let my community down, and let my family down. So it was something that affected me in many ways, and it affected my confidence. And it took me really till the writing of my book did I have the insight that affected my confidence so much that it took 5 years to really restore my confidence because of the impact of that loss, what that did to me.
So that was almost into your mid-20s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. So I was 17 when I lost that match.
You also 22. That's really traumatic to a degree.
Yes, it was incredibly traumatic because I had sacrificed, and like I worked because I didn't have those athletic skills so many other kids had. And I had determined I was going to outwork anybody. You might have more skill, you might have more speed, you might have more skill in terms of technique, you might have more strength, but you are not going to work harder than me, and you will not outcondition me. I remember the quarterfinals of that state tournament. I was wrestling a kid by the name of Bobby Lucero. He was from a school called Montrose. Montrose produced some great wrestlers. And I had wrestled a teammate of his, summer before.
Yeah.
So I'm wrestling Bobby, and I was in this fog most of the match, and I'm losing. And I'm thinking, as this match is going on, is this how it's going to end? Is this how it's going to end? And I was just out of it. And somehow in third period, I managed to tie the match. And in those days, they would take, you'd have a short break before overtime, and you go to their respective corners with your coaches. And my coach Ken Larson and our Steve Bell was the assistant coach. So I'm there, and Ken Larson is giving it to me, and we used to call it Ken, coach giving you the finger. So he's got his index finger and he's popping me in the chest. You better get your head in the match, get with it. And everybody knew when coach was giving you the finger, he was not pleased with you. And so I went out there in overtime and I destroyed Bobby. I mean, I just put it to him. And so we're shaking hands at the end of the match, and Bobby looks at me and he goes, Skip, you're really in good shape, aren't you? And I just kind of grinned and I said, yeah, I am.
Okay, now let's dive into this book. Let's dive into this book real quick, because we did a little bit with the wrestling. So what made you want to write a book? Because so many people in life, and this is something that I always try to get the audience to imagine with me, everyone has a story to tell, and we all figure a format to tell it. Some people are what we call folklores, and they go around on vacations and they go to reunions and they relive stories.
Yes, yes.
What made you decide to write this book?
Well, when I was struggling with my depression, and I was still in the early weeks of my recovery, my brother Chris, my youngest brother, who was an All-American at North Carolina State, he was a very heralded high school wrestler in his own stead, he called me very excited because Franklin Graham had held a Bible study in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Chris had attended with a group of other men. And the topic was suffering. And the gist of it was Franklin had shared that why do we think we as Christians should not have to suffer if Christ suffered so brutally upon the cross on our behalf? And with that, it changed my mentality, because for 9 months, I had been praying, Lord, please, please deliver me from this darkness. And over a period of 2 days, my prayers changed. And it was hinged on this verse that came to mind out of Philippians 3:10.
Okay.
Oh, that I might know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering. I knew that verse. I had prayed that verse hundreds of times. But when I was suffering, I wanted deliverance. And then those 2 days, my prayer shifted from Lord, please deliver me, to Lord, what would you have me learn? And how might I use it to help others?
Okay.
And so I began to jot notes down, what I had learned and what I was learning, with the intent that I was going to share it. At that time, I was stationed at Eisenhower Army Medical Center in Augusta, Georgia. And before I left, because that was my last year in the Army,
Okay.
I asked to share with the staff at large. So my commander arranged it. I had a morning session, afternoon session in the auditorium, and I shared my story and I shared the lessons learned to encourage others that were struggling, go get help, to decrease that stigma related to it. I was a decorated soldier, 37 months deployed, 30 months in combat zones, a wrestler, a national veterans wrestling champion at age 56.
Whoa.
So I had some credentials. I was a well-known colonel throughout the hospital. And so people knew me. People knew who I was. And I was determined to tell my story, to open up and say, here's what happened to me. I'm a tough guy, but I succumbed to this disease. And with that, then I began to look for other avenues to share. And it had this kind of in the back of my mind, well, what about a book? Well, the next year, 2015, I was watching a series of broadcasts through what's called transformational books with Christine Closer, a woman who has a publishing company and helps authors bring their books to light. Well, she had a writing contest that I entered, and with it came a publishing deal.
Oh,
I won.
huh.
And with that, then we started working on the book. So really didn't start in earnest doing anything with the book. So I won the contest August of 2015. I was notified, but didn't do anything really with the book till 2016, January. I started doing some things. And then my book was published in February of this year.
Okay, now look, let's go deep into something real quick, because here's the thing that I always like to tell my guests when they're on here, because when you write a book, there's a long, lengthy process to it, really long. There's all kinds of steps to it, and inside of that, there's a lot of things that people that want to write books don't know and probably won't know, because some people skip steps when they write books, and some publishers, don't say everything. Some companies are there just to grab money. So my question to you is this: after you won this contest, what was the first initial thing you put on paper after you had took all the little notes that you've been taking? How did you start your first book? That's a better way to ask it.
Well, I followed this system that Christine had. I went in through there and writing a series of questions and doing this in detail. Questions such as, why do you want to write this book? How would this book change your readers? How will this book change you? How will this book change the world? How will this book change your business? And so answering those questions, and then who is this book for? What are they like? And as much detail as I could put into those questions. So I spent a matter of weeks compiling that information. Then with that in mind, I began to go and write then on index cards everything I could think of related to what might go into my book. And then I began to arrange those, what might be chapters, and then rubber banded each chapter there. And then I began to say, okay, how would I sequence this? And then try to put together something of a table of contents and say, okay. And then you start looking at who might give me endorsements and write those. So I began to reach out to individuals for endorsements. I have an endorsement, for instance, as you there from John Peterson, two-time Olympic medalist, gold and silver. I'm good friends with John and have been for almost 20 years now. From Jay Robinson, coach, Olympian and coach from former coach from University of Minnesota. And so reaching out for endorsements, this type of thing. And then it was working on the cover design.
Yeah, which
all
is
these
amazing.
Things are going on. And actually that cover design was a photo, or rather a picture of my brother Duke, very talented, one of my younger brothers there, my second youngest, that he designed. And then the graphic design artist took this and we decided how we were going to use it on the cover. So it was these steps taking place. And then you began to put pen to paper, hours and hours on the keyboard. And I don't like that. Okay. And then you're working with your publisher for revision. So you do this, and then they're sending you back things saying, well, do you like this interior? Send us what photos you might want to there. We can do 4 photos. Send us the captions for the photos. And so it's just back and forth. You do it, and then they're sending you the manuscript and say, go through it. Tell us, if this is what you want. You're sending it back to your the editor is going through us. Well, you might consider changing this. I don't like this. This doesn't make sense. Please explain this. And so now you're going through the whole manuscript again and making those edits. So as in writing, we like to say the magic is in the editing. So we talk about a first, a S, basically a shitty first copy.
Right.
First
Yeah. Let's just call it an essay.
Yeah, that basically you're going to cut out so much stuff, you're going to change so much stuff, but you just got to get it out on paper. You just got to get it there, and then you spend the process of revising it, revising it, revising it, revising it, and revising it over and over and over again to hone it so that you try to make it the best it can be.
Okay. Now, in doing all that, when did you hit your first writer's block? Because people, you get out here and you start funneling ideas, and you do the. I take it back to middle school when we started writing more term papers and stuff like that. I assume that's similar to what you start off with, right? So you probably make a spider web or some type of way to do things. Where did you hit your first roadblock?
Oh goodness, I had writer's block. I don't know how many times where I'd get going and maybe not, go to things for weeks at a time, saying, and then have to pick up. And we had what was called a book midwife. Carrie Reed was her name. Oh, lovely, lovely woman that was so patient and gracious and kind to me. Skip, how we doing there? Skip, how we coming along? And it's like, okay, Carrie. And I get back, and sometimes, you're just staring here like, and most important thing is when you hit that writer's block is that you just try to type, even if it's just a word, even if it's just a sentence, just get yourself going and knowing that, okay, I can just put it in because I can always go back and revise it. I can go back and delete it if necessary, but just get going again. But I might go weeks and not write anything. And then there might be times when I say, okay, I'm going to write for the next hour. And 3 hours later, I look at the clock and, oh my gosh, I just get lost in it. And I just be going. It's like, wow, it was just, things would just flow.
Okay. I like the way that sounds. Now, there's one thing that we didn't do in this podcast that I probably should have asked earlier, but we were fumbling through things. And like I tell everybody, I do an organic podcast, so you never know what question's going to come up. So I'm going to backtrack into the middle of things.
Okay.
You told us the story of how the first bit of depression came about. I mean, you had depression all the time, but you told us about the state championship time. But when did you officially come to terms with that? Hey, I have a problem with depression.
Okay.
Because I kind of skipped over that, and I apologize, but that's the key thing inside your book and inside everything that's brought you full circle to today. So what exactly happened? And this right here, like I always do, in these conversations that I have with people, we had a news magazine called 2020. You had Diane Sawyer, you had Barbara Walters, and you had John Stossel. And John Stossel, he was a comical character. We're not going to do any John Stossel here. So We're going to go first with the Diane Sawyer question. When did depression hit you the hardest, and when did you accept that you had a problem?
Okay.
And I'm not going to call it an illness or a disease because I don't want to put tape around it any certain way. I'm just going to say a problem because we all see things differently when it comes to mental health. Correct?
Well, I think we can call it an illness. It is.
All right, so we can call it. All right.
It is an illness.
Just wanted to see what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. It's that. And for me, things started in the summer of 2013. It was about 18 months away from my retirement from the Army. And when we retired from the Army in the end of December 2014, that would be 26 and a half years in the Army. I began to experience some insomnia. And I was working with a psychologist that was part of the resilience program for the Army to specifically work on that. And then there were some events that took place in my department, some things there in our cardiac catheterization lab and dialysis that affected our graduate medical education programs with our medical student, with the residents and then medical students that would visit and do rotations. And I took responsibility for this, but really I could not have foreseen this or done anything about it. But I was taking responsibility for this. So I'd sit there at night and ruminate on this and think, oh my gosh, it's affecting our residents, it's affecting those medical students that were going to rotate with us, it's affecting patient care. And I began to feel guilt and shame. And then in a matter of months, then I was having surgery. And so I had surgery on my pellet, on my gums rather. They took a graft. And with that surgery, then I had complications. And with surgeries, it disrupts your whole routine. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't eat the way I like to eat. It further impacted that insomnia. And so all these symptoms got worse: the guilt, the shame, the insomnia, and then my cognition started getting impacted. I was having trouble remembering things. I could remember a conversation 5 minutes before. I was having trouble recalling medical syndromes and things like this. It got to the point in early fall of 2013 that I thought I was suffering from early onset dementia.
Whoa.
That I actually went to the chief of behavioral health and said, I'm concerned here. And he arranged for some psychometric testing to ensure that. And they tested and said, no, we don't think you have that. You test fine and certainly above in some levels, other levels lower than we think you might should be due to the level of your education and so forth. But we think that's related to the stress and to your insomnia. So that was a relief. And then things just got worse. And then mood started getting worse. I started isolating myself. And then these negative thoughts, you don't deserve to be in the Army. You don't deserve to be a colonel. You've let your family down. You've let the Army down. You've let your department down. Those just started playing like an endless loop in my mind. December, I have another surgery, this time on my knee.
Whoa.
And so you're barely, you get recovered there in that change in all your routine. And now you're recovered. You're starting to recover your normal exercise routine and diet routine and so forth. And now I have another surgery. And that, once again, disrupts exercise. And I've always relied on exercise. And if you had asked me before all of this, had I been an anxious person, I would have said, absolutely not. But what I realized in retrospect is I relied on exercise, intense exercise for that matter, to deal with my anxiety. And now you take that away from me. Now you take away that identity. I'm a tough guy, in terms of being able to exercise and outwork younger soldiers, younger men, and not get on the mats with the wrestlers I would coach and so forth. And so that self-identity is affected. My routines are affected again. And by the end of December, I remember after Christmas telling my wife, because I had complications again after this surgery, that I was utterly and totally exhausted physically, mentally, and socially. I still could not put it together. So we get into 2014. And I seemed to have a rebound where I seemed to improve for a short while. And then things began to, after that short rebound, once again, quickly go down. And then in March, I have a third surgery to resurface my skin due to some scars from burns that I suffered as a young child. And then the bottom falls out. So all those symptoms are getting worse that I described. Plus the body aches that came with it, the old wrestling injuries, the osteoarthritis, just from overworking, the gazillion miles I ran on hard pavement, the tens of thousands of push-ups and thousands of chin-ups and all those things that you know what I'm talking about,
Yes.
that I did over the years. Now you feel it. Oh gosh, that was made worse. And all those other symptoms just played out worse, got worse, and got worse. And to the point on April 17th, 2014, I went into my office at work. And I had a big, beautiful corner office, one of the best offices in all the hospital. For the chief of department of medicine had that office. And two walls of the office were were basically big windows, and closed the shades, turned off the lights, locked the door, turned off my pager and phones, turned off the office phone, crawled under my desk. And I was in a fetal position. And for 4 hours, I was asking myself, Skip, what are you doing? How did you get here? And I kept asking myself that question. And then I slowly began to put the pieces together. And those symptoms that I was having, starting back in the summer. And I became this observer participant. And finally, I admitted, Skip, you're depressed. Go get help.
Okay, man, that's amazing. I like the self-diagnosis and the self-care, even though it was a lot that you had to go through to get there. That's amazing you did that, and what you won't understand today that I'm going to tell you, you just helped somebody. Somebody's going to listen to this podcast. Somebody, because this may be a 2-part podcast. We never know, depending on the length of it. But you just helped somebody. Like, you took your story, and I know that this is inside your book also, so we won't go deep into every single thing that's in your book because we want people to buy the book, and we'll plug your book in just a moment. But that is inspirational right there. You actually had enough gumption to take it upon yourself to self-diagnose and then go get the proper diagnosis, correct?
Yes.
And from there, that's where the book came from. And I believe that it was other steps that went on with it that we'll get you to discuss in just a moment. So listeners, the thing that I want you to definitely take away from that is that when you need help, sometimes it actually has to come from within. It can't be a family member to tell you this. It was directly you in that office in the fetal position. Well, after you got out of it, doing that. All right, so let's skip a little bit ahead. So you decide to go get help, and you get help. And with depression, a lot of people that I talk to about it, they believe that it's something that comes and goes. And I do believe it comes and goes at different periods because we're not always going to be on a high, and we're going to be in the middle. And sometimes we plateau for a long time, and then we fall or we get higher, So after this instance, when did you fall again? This is the Barbara Walters question. When did you fall again?
Because that's a great question.
Because yes. The thing about it is that we always tell the downfall, and then we talk about the triumph where we come back up, where we rise from the ashes like a phoenix. But we never talk about that second part. The second part always gets thrown away, and we're like, oh, after I fell once, I tripped, but I never fell again. Yes. And that's true in every story that we hear. So when did you fall again?
Then I had another nadir, not nearly as significant, but we had retired from the Army. We were on transitional leave. We arrived here back in Texas on December the 3rd, 2014. And we were in great spirits and so forth. But then over the next month to 6 weeks, well, no, actually it was by Christmas time, my mood again had declined. I get that guilt, trouble sleeping, the sense of lack of confidence, indecision, um, negative thoughts playing over in my mind. They're plagued me again. Now, I left the Army still on medicines, and I'm still on medicines to maintain the stability. See a psychiatrist every 6 months or so, and have been seeing a therapist. But that being said, I dropped down, and that took a period of months there to climb out of that. Probably 3-4 months there before started feeling better. Certainly by May, June timeframe, I was feeling much better again.
Okay, and thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people don't and won't tell that part of their story, because like like I said, we all have that up and down. So from that period on, you've written this book. Your book is in part it's self-care, and it's also you helping people, and you help people through your wrestling and professing your faith and through your faith. And I commend you on that, and the world needs that, because this one thing that's a selling power that I get from some people is that, oh, I can help you all day. I can help you all day with this, and that, and do this and that. But if you do that and have no morality behind it, or you don't have a sense of a morality code with that, what kind of help are you really giving someone? And with what you're doing, there's that morality. And sometimes, when like I'm looking from the outside in, I can see all these aspects. So how does that feel to know that you're helping people with morality at the same time as with depression and all that other stuff? Because from your wrestling discipline, you had to get a bit of morality out there, because you couldn't be. There's nothing dirty about wrestling beyond. There's nothing dirty beyond wrestling beyond how good you shoot and how good you sprawl. In all honesty.
Well, that's a wonderful perspective that I've never had anybody share, JR, in terms of the morality, and I thank you for that. I appreciate
You're welcome. You're welcome.
But it's something that I'm called to, because when I made that change of perspective from Lord, please deliver me, to what would you have me learn and how might I use it to help others, then I received that calling that I was compelled to share my message, that I couldn't do it otherwise, that there were individuals that needed that. My wife and I have a saying, don't waste the pain. And so when I went through this, I knew based on that God wanted me to share, that I needed to share this message to help others, that there were many, many, many men out there. And because knowing the mentality of men, we're tough, we can do it.
Definitely. We're built Ford tough. Some of you are built Chevy tough, and some of you are built like Dodges.
That I can do this on my own, that attitude, that we are reluctant to admit we need help, much less seek help. And so I tell people, and one of my signature speeches is, even tough guys get depressed. You're not a wimp if you need help. You're not weak if you seek help. And that's one of the things that I try to tell others. And so I have that calling on my life. Similarly, as I was called to be a physician, I was called to be a soldier. I have this calling, and I can't do otherwise.
And that's commendable. And the thing here, like once again, like I keep reiterating this, with all this about you and with the discipline from wrestling, what was your first outreach? What was your first outreach after you had written your book? Because I know you go on speaking engagements and different things like that. What was the first outreach? What was the first person I know we don't name people because of reasons, but who came up to you and told you that you were making an impact in their life after all
Hmm,
this?
that's interesting. Let me think back. Well, I think it was my youngest brother, actually. He read the book and he actually wrote the foreword, as you may be aware of the book.
Yes, most definitely.
And he called and said, Skip, oh, I'm getting so much out of this. And thank you for writing this. And I've shared it with others, and they're telling me how much it's helping them. I've shared it with this person, I've shared it with that person, and I've shared it with another person. I've read this portion to somebody, and they can relate to this, Skip, and it's helping them. And he's told me that repeatedly since I've written the book and since it's been published, rather. Uh, he shared that with me, that he's shared it with multiple people and read portions to multiple people. Chris works as a fitness trainer. He owns his own gym there in Raleigh, North Carolina, has been in the fitness business for over 30 years. And so he has clients and comes in contact with these folks day in and day out. And he's been in Raleigh since his college days. So he knows a lot of people. And he's been featured on TV there as Coach Chris at various times. And so people know him well. And he's done a lot of training and, various athletes and kids that he helped coach when they were young, and now they're young adults. And with that, had a lot of influence on people and knows a lot of people in the community and reaches out to them.
Okay.
And with that, he's the one that has shared the most and was the first one to share with me.
And that right there, that has to bring you some type of joy there,
Yeah.
because like I noticed, just with any guest I have on here, I get these messages, and like when yours airs, all over those millions of different platforms, somebody will come back to me, and I won't ever be able to let you hear it, but they'll tell me how you touched them. It's
Good.
always the first person that, and they always ask me how to get in touch with people. And on these podcasts, there's two things that we do. We like to plug things and get established information out there. And then the show notes, audience, I'll definitely make sure that we have all of Skip's information so you can get in contact with him. But I need you to do me a favor real quick, Skip. I need you to give the audience how they can reach you and where they can find your book, the formats for your book, and how they can reach you for speaking engagements.
Great. Well, thank you, JR. You can get a hold of me there at www.wrestlingisnotforwimps.com. Again, www.wrestlingisnotforwimps.com. And my book, Wrestling is Not for Wimps. You can find it on Amazon, both in a paperback and an ebook. You can find it on Ingram Sparks. You can find it Barnes and Noble in terms of their catalog. So these are some of the places that you can Google books. You can find it there also.
And it's another place you can find this book that really intrigued me. And you didn't mention it, but I'm going to mention it.
What's that?
It's one place that you can find your book that really intrigued me. Walmart. Walmart.com, your book is listed.
Oh, well, I wasn't aware of that. Hey, you just shared something new to me.
when I seen your book there, I was like, wow, before you even come on the podcast, and this is not to take away from any other author or anybody else that's ever been on here, to be on Walmart.com, you got to be doing something.
Well, great. I'm delighted to hear that because it's a message that people need to hear. It's a message that will help people. It's a message that will resonate with people. It's written to decrease the stigma related to mental illness, to written primarily for men who are struggling right now. It's written in layman's terms. It's written in short, easy to read chapters, and it's chock full of tips, tactics, and techniques to help those in their recovery and to maintain health and wellness.
Okay, that is awesome. And Skip, there comes a part in my show, and I say this is the only part of the show that belongs to me, um, where the audience, we have listened and we need you to give back to us. In different instances on the show, people come in and they tell me about a secret talent or a secret that they have never shared with the world. And there's so many different examples. My example is I do not like the root vegetable beets. I'm from Virginia, and we eat a lot of vegetables. I'm solid,
Yeah,
but I will eat a parsnip. I will eat rhubarb. I will eat anything else, alfalfa grass. I will eat the pyramid. But if you offer me beets in your house, I will leave your house. I will get in my car. I will get on the plane. I will leave, and we won't talk anymore. And then when you correct the issue, I'll come back. But beets, it's not a texture thing. I don't even think it's a taste thing because I eat them sometimes. I eat them every year to see if I can change my mind about it. And it's just a no. But that's my secret. That's my secret. And I it's not a secret anymore, obviously, now because I talk about it all the time. But it's really that serious with me. Like, I mean, who eats parsnips and doesn't eat potatoes?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
What's the difference, really?
They're kissing cousins. Hey.
Yeah, but what can you really match up to a beet? Do you eat beets?
Oh yeah, I love beets.
Oh Lord, won't be coming to your house for dinner.
There's not many things that I don't eat. Now, if it were Brussels sprouts,
Brussels sprouts.
Like the smell. I think it's the smell. That's if it weren't the smell, I think I could eat them just fine. That's the problem. I think that's the problem.
Right.
I love vegetables. Oh, I love vegetables. But you want a secret talent? I heard your podcasts. I've listened to your podcast. Okay. So I came prepared, JR.
Oh, you're the first one ever. Now, guys, let me give you the instruction on this. Y'all won't see this video unless he allows it to be part of my documentary that I'm putting out after the season. But he went out here and literally grabbed something from in front of this computer, and he's about to show it to me.
Now, I don't know if you can see this very well, but I write these things out. This was a inaugural reward, or award rather, that I did for my wife, and I entitled it the Zebedee Award. As you recall, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder, Jesus' disciples, left their nets and went to follow Jesus. Well, who took up the slack? Who did that? Well, it's probably their father. And so my wife has been, as she says, a slack picker-upper throughout her marriage. So she deserved the Zebedee Award, the first. And there's only been one other person so far inducted into this, and that was our good friend Kelly Ristet. She and her husband retired from the Army summer before last. And so when they retired, she received the second
picking up the slack
induction.
Award.
Yes.
Now, let me describe this for the audience real fast. Oh, wow, he's got two of them, and they're all framed.
Now, this is an acrostic. And so I take the first letter in a word, and then I ascribe a quality to it.
Okay.
In many cases, I take a name and ascribe that. And I have made these for people over the years and given these on occasions, on special occasions, or, well, on special occasions as special gifts to honor these individuals. Now, this was for my wife to honor her writing when she, as I recall, it was when she got her agent when she finally landed an agent for her book, because she's
Oh,
an
wow.
author. She's an amazing author. Now she's the real writer in the family, I say. Now this says, so again, I'm going to see if I can get it angled in there. So
Okay.
it says writer,
Yeah, it says writer.
and then
Would you read it to us?
yes, Sherry, my writer. Writer, so W, writer is she. R, really creative. I, interested in eavesdropping, because she's always listening. She's an introvert, as most writers are. And so she just happens to listen. T, true student of the craft. E, enters into the lives of her characters. I have come to know her characters very well. R, ready for the publication of many books. So again, and then I have a special note to my sweetheart at the bottom. But that's one of my secret talents, or to those who have presented this, not so secret. But I love doing this kind of thing and have done so over many years now.
Okay. Now, usually I always have different questions and things like that. That was very interesting. I'm glad you were prepared, because that threw me for a loop. And see, the thing is, and I'll say this on this podcast. This me going into my third season. This is the successful season. And obviously your episode will be between third and fourth, because we met towards the middle. But I'm actually doing a docuseries, like where we're right here behind me. Let's see. There's another. I keep phones, cameras, different things that are recording us. You're actually right now only. Well, I'll show it to you after we're done talking. There's a TV behind us that has you on it. I call it my computer monitor, but it's just a little 40-inch TV that has you in the background right there. So you're a part of something, and with this podcast, but you're part of something even bigger. You are what we call an influencer. So let me explain this influencer to you, and then you take it from here after I give it to you. Okay? An influencer is somebody that doesn't know that they're doing something. Everyone in life helps and aids people. Okay? We always do that. That's part of our human nature. When you influence, it has a broader scope. The things that you took from this podcast today, the morality, you didn't think too much about. You passing on a morale code to people. All right, so that's your first part of an influencer. That's a new skill that you know of that you have. Being an influencer gives you abilities that you don't have all the time, but you will get together in a way like with this morality thing. You'll take that from this day forward, and you will use this, and you will help. But when you're helping someone else, the next person that uses your information becomes an influencer. So the way you carry yourself, the way you walk through your town, the way you go through your city, the way you go outside your home, you influence people. Do you agree with this?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, JR.
Go ahead.
That every encounter we have with people, we are either exuding the love of Christ, or we are exuding something that is not kind, that is not gracious, that is harmful or toxic. So we can either bring kindness, that we can bring healing, that we can bring graciousness, that we can bring joy and patience towards others, or we can be ugly and toxic in our interactions with others. And so I try to go through life to bring the former, realizing that everybody is struggling with something. And I say to others that you don't know the story behind the story. And so be it, the people that deliver my mail, the people that pick up the trash, the delivery people, the clerk that I meet in the store, somebody I pass in a store, whomever it is that I come in contact with, the patients that I treat, the people I worked alongside with, it doesn't matter that even if they seemed sharp or ugly, try not to take that personally, but not to respond in kind, but to be patient and to be kind, to be gracious, because you don't know the story behind the story. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know that maybe they have somebody that's critically ill, or they had a family member that just died. Because I was amazed how often I'd have a patient come in, we'd be talking and chitting and chatting, begin the visit, and only after we got partway into, because I'd ask, how are you, what's going on, and begin my examination, and only maybe partway through the visit would they disclose, oh, my mother died, or my father's in the hospital, or I had a son who died, or some other critical incident in their life that happened. And this type of thing, it was incredible to me how often it took a little bit for them to be comfortable to divulge that with me. Now, some of them know, when as we talk, we had that kind of rapport that when I'd ask, well, what's going on? That they could tell me that. Others, we had to ease into it. So that's why I say you don't know the story behind the story. And so I hope people can understand that we all struggle. We all have our own difficulties, and understand that everybody has a story behind the story.
Okay, and I like that. And I want to thank you for being on West Virginia Uncommonplace. And me and you have gotten a great rapport. And I like to tell us at the very end so people can understand these interactions. Um, when you seek out a guest or guest seeks you out, you talk in emails first. And I am the type of person that I stay professional throughout the email. And then we get on camera. The first 5 or 10 minutes, I think we had about a good 15-minute conversation or so. We had a lengthy conversation. We found common ground here and there. And I want to say, out of all my guests, like, just something about you, you got the same thing that I have, and it's that charismatic enigma. It's that polarizing figure, because everybody has a luster to them,
Hmm.
but not everybody's going to polarize and be charismatic and have that enigma all in one. And you have that.
Thank you.
So one way I'm going to challenge you, like I challenge a few people. Not everyone gets challenged this way, because some episodes I will not say this. You got a lot of knowledge out here. Why are you not doing a podcast?
Hmm.
But before you answer that, I'm going to tell you a story I'm going to tell you a good story real quick before we get off here. All right. Everyone in life wakes up at different times. Everyone has a different shift they work in life. Everyone has something going on. But the common thing that we have is, in any day, we have a random amount of 2 hours. Me being a person that works any type of shift because of the need of my job, most of the time I work a normal 7 to 3. Never work 3 to 11, because I don't believe in that kind of thing. I don't even believe that's a good mindset. But anyway, between 7 at night and 9 p.m. at night, or 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., I have free time. I don't do anything at that time. I don't do anything extra. So my question to you is, when do you have free time in a day? And everybody has that 2 hour block, and we're not counting lunch, because that's something we deserve. But you have a 2 hour block somewhere in life. So why aren't you doing a podcast?
I guess I'd have to say fear.
Fear?
Yeah, I guess that's what it would boil down to, the sense that why would anybody want to listen to me? That what more could I bring with a regular podcast? Things that aren't already being said out there that I need to have a podcast that would be something of value on a regular basis. I think that's what it is. The fear that
Well, let me correct
nobody
that.
really is
Let me
going to
correct
want
this
to
for you
listen.
real quick. All right, the audience can't see you right now. You have a pair of glasses on right now. Could you remove those? All right, what do I look like to you now?
What do I look? What do you look like to
What do I look
me?
like to you right now?
You look like a happy guy.
All
You
right.
look like a guy who's enjoying himself.
Okay, now put your glasses back on real quick. Up. They'll go back on. All right, now you have your glasses back on and we both can see each other again, right?
Yeah,
Do your glasses give you a better perspective?
a little bit. Things are sharper. Yes.
Okay, so you got a perspective. You have a perspective that's different from someone else's. You see me with one set of eyes, and then you put on a corrected set of eyes in the opinion of the medical world, and you see me different.
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
So there, I just answered your question. And that's what I like about this. You know, it's always a challenge for someone to not think about that perspective. You write a book that gives your perspective one time.
Correct.
Your perspective is ever changing.
Mm.
Are you going to write an anthology?
I am going to write another book. Yes, I have a book in mind. The second book that I have in mind is entitled Wrestling Bullies is Not for Wimps.
Okay. So you got another book. So there, you just told me you have another perspective outside of the perspective that you had before. So it sounds like you could do a podcast. But once again, I definitely want to thank.
I feel that half Nelson or that arm bar on me here, Jr. Oh, ooh.
Now
trying to fight it off. I'm trying to peel it off. I'm trying to work it off.
Now I tell you, in practice, I'm cheap in practice. I would just try to do a quick head and arm, and just I'm not even going to shoot in with this type of thing. I'm just going to use my power, no technique, just my strength and yeah. But once again, I want to thank you for being on West Virginia Commonplace, and I definitely would like you to come back.
Well, thank you.
Because here's some things that happen in life. All right, no single podcast will change your life completely, but you have an audience today that you'll carry with you from this show, and you will garner more questions.
Good.
You have a second book coming out.
Yes.
It has totally different aspects to it. And we definitely want to hear that story.
Wonderful.
Okay? So once again, thank you for being on West Virginia Commonplace.
It's been my pleasure, JR.
Thank you.